Load up on guns, bring your friends, it's fun to lose and to pretend she's overborn, self-assured, no, a dirty word. Wasn't what I do best, and for this gift I feel blessed. A little group has always been, always will till the end. Yeah, just what it is, so yeah, yes, it makes me smile. I found it hard, was hard to find, well, whatever, never mind. When the lights out, yes, it's dangerous, here we are now, entertainers.
Look at that. It's the kitten cam. If we have volume and it does not Am I live? Can you hear me? Anyway, the camera is elsewhere. Let's do a little quick sound check before we get too crazy. Thanks, Kat. All right, let's look at the chat here. Where's the chat? Can you guys hear me? Is anybody out there? Can you hear it? Okay, cool. So we can hear me. So what it was like, well, I don't know quite what you're talking about. We talk about a lot of what ifs and directions of stuff. So I'm not sure quite, what you're pointing out there. Anyway. But, like, it's a free country, so you can always flip the channel and stuff, That's how it be. That's how it was. Anyway. Yeah, so we got some cool news tonight. Matter of fact, let's get to some of that right now before David calls me up in 5 minutes. I think we got enough time. I think so. Here it is. I think it's this one. And I'm going to go ahead and mute myself so you can listen to this cool girl.
Hello, my name is Sayla Cook, and I do not like these masks. And these masks are horrible. And one of my friends said that his friend fainted because of a mask. Wow, congrats. And you don't even know how these other kids feel. They're breathing in the same dirty air, and my cousin said they're afraid to take off the masks. Great job. You're creating public schools with fearful children. Wow. I'm so proud of you guys. Wow, amazing. And I don't think barely anybody likes masks in schools. Their children are suffocating. You don't know what it feels like, and it's nonsense. Seriously. Why would you do that? Why in the world would you do that? And God created us so we can be free people. And we're not being free here or at public schools, okay? So I would take your masks off if I were you. And I'm not wearing a mask right now, and I never will as much as I can. And George Washington made America so we could be free citizens of the United States of America. And the Statue of Liberty is for liberty and freedom, and we're not free. So maybe you just don't believe in George Washington or God, or the boss of you or someone is controlling you. Stand up and take these masks off these children. Don't be afraid. And we voted you to be the school board members we wanted you to be. Okay, so please.
I think there's my remote there. There we go. What'd you think about that? Greta Thunberg better look out. Anyway. So, everybody's freaking out about the Bitcoins. I'm going to ask David Dubine about that, obviously. I don't own any Bitcoins, but a lot of people do. Let's check it out. That's Zero Hedge. What does it say, man? What does it say? Bitcoin tumbles after Treasury unveils stricter crypto reporting to IRS. In other words, like I predicted, the government wants in on all the crypto. They want the encryptions. They want to know where, when, and how you are moving money no matter what. So that's the way it is. Sorry about that. But yeah, a lot of people have already made a lot of money in crypto. So I think they might have to pull it out soon. Otherwise, it's going to disappear into the government hands. Or they'll come charge you with crimes for not giving up information that would let them have access to your cryptocurrency. Wait for that one. That's the next ones I predict right there. Is they're going to pass laws to make it illegal to not share private information. Just mark my words. Anyway, let's go back to the kitty cam over here. If I can find my mouse. And see what's happening in the chat room there. Once again. And we'll get back to the news later. Look, they're all sleeping. I should go shake them all up to get them pumped up, but we'll just let sleeping dogs lie there. Anyway, let me check out the chat room here. So what's up, weed shaman? What it be? What it was? Let me give you a wrench. You need a wrench. Have one. It's on me. They're great for fixing things and like hitting people with them. No, I'm just kidding. Raven Wolf, Gilgamesh, Living in Left Field, Perry Scott, Alias, Muddy Funstar, and Elena Gonzalez. And Joanne, what's going on? Alcatraz, yeah, that's funny. What's up, Perry? I didn't see your name, but did I? I did, because I just read it. Duh. A1, you don't have a wrench either. You need a wrench. Yeah, James LaCour's mad at David Dubine. I don't know. Seems like a cool dude to me. And we can't all be Nostradamuses. We just, judging on what we're seeing here. What we're seeing. Let me go see if I have a camera of my own somewhere hooked up here. There I am. Hey, what's going on? Oh, shit. I'm not paying attention to the Skype, and we're at 9:59. I better hook it up. I better hook it all up. Let's see here. Skype. And I forgot to open his doodads. So I get it. All right. Here we are. We're ready for action. We're ready for action. I don't know, man. That's a boring kitty cam, but they're cool. They're all fuzzy and they're big and they're ready to give away. We got to give them to nice families. There's some really cool cats. One of them looks like a werewolf. I don't know which one it is there. They're just all taking a nap right now. Convenient. Let me see. I'm going to mess with it here, so maybe we can see them better here. Here we go. We'll brighten it up. Oh, too bright, too bright, too bright. Wrong one. There we go. Maybe we should just make them like colored kitties. That's always cool. I'm just joking. Yeah, they were doing all kinds of cool circus tricks a minute ago, and now that I want them to perform, the little beasts are taking a nap. Those little bastards. Anyway, welcome to 420 TV Late Night. I'm your host, DJ Ransom the Freedomist, but you can just call me Ransom because I'm just a regular dude with some internet and stuff, man. Let me see the chat room here while we wait on Mr. Dubine. Did I really just glitch out like that? That was pretty trippy, man. What the hell? There I am. Whew. Anyway. James Crouch. What's it? Hidden James Crouching Tiger right there. Yeah, typical cats. I'd love to be a guest on this show and we could talk about the crypto. Well, let's do that this week, man. You can come on, because I'm not going to act like I know about crypto. I know about what I know and I have my opinions and, yeah, I don't know. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody knows that. They're like elbows and they're like assholes and everybody's got one. That doesn't make them right, though. So, I love to listen to other people, especially when I don't know shit about the topic in the first place. I always trip on those people that claim to know about things they don't know about. You know what I mean? You know those people. They go on and it's something that you happen to know about and you're just listening and you're like, yeah, okay. You're Looney Tunes. No, I'm just joking. So what's up with the Dubine? And his Ice Age conversations. Matter of fact, I need to open up his links he gave me here. Copy that link and we'll put that right over here. Pew. Speak up. Am I not loud enough? Do I need to be louder? Yeah, the IRS does want our Coinbase now. They want all of your bases. They want to cover your bases. And then they want you to know that you're never going to know who's on second. Ever. Because they're private at their private bank. That's who's on second. John Johnson, what's up? Simon Milner. Would it be what it was? I hope everybody's poofed. Because I'm not going to lie, I did, and I feel great. I feel great. Oh, and by the way, the marijuana is going to be legal on June 29th in the state of New Mexico. I don't know exactly. Oh, here we go. I'll shut up and we'll talk more about that later.
TV Freedom of 1776 on the dial. And I had a chance to come across a beautiful May 10th, 1919 newspaper that cost 12 cents, The Pathfinder. And what was it talking about? War and Peace questions summarized, revising the League of Nations armistice with Germany. Such a great article, you know, and if I wouldn't have even read this and known it was the date, if you would have just scraped all the info of the dates off of it, I would have thought it was today. They talk about the same exact things leading up to the same exact events, the same players, and if you were to just change the names, you could bring this exact same news summary up to 2021, which is the most fascinating thing. And, you know, you just wonder how many times things in society have been rinse and repeat, because they know psychologically how humans will behave to the different stimulus put upon them. Now everybody's woken up from this COVID madness, mask mandates. Now what's next? Because the fear is gone from that. So there has to be something new coming in the future. Not really sure what it is, but everywhere you look now, the mask fiasco is over, and people are really questioning a lot about interconnections between just so many levels of government, so many levels of countries, so many levels of institution that are so deeply ingrained and embedded together there can be no independent anything anymore, any longer. And forget the collusion of, you know, sending viruses over to China and all that. What is really happening is it's so all-encompassing that everybody is seeing this giant billboard of corruption and intertwining in front of them to the point that I don't care how many narratives, how many news agencies you buy off, the average person is looking at the giant billboard and going, whoa, lost the plot on nearly everything. How do we get it back? General populace is out there going, well, there's a lot of questions what happened now. So how do we go from now and through the summer? Because something this big way comes, as I've been told by a few people, this summer is going to be gargantuan, and it seems, you know, all those people censored off of social media, especially the doctors talking about the effects from the COVID vax. A lot of things are going to start happening when we come into flu season this year, with the economy, with the supply chain shortages, with the earth changes, magnetic field, and we're going to try to wrap that all up tonight into a nice, succinct program. So where does the world take us from now until, say, October of this year? I mean, really, what could you expect moving out with the narratives? Because Ransom and I have been bouncing a few articles back and forth to each other over the week, and all is not as it seems. I guess that's kind of an understatement. What do you think, Ransom?
No, I think that's true, man. There's all kinds of weird stuff going on, manipulation of money, food. I mean, there's never an end to the articles. And, you know, I keep getting these discussions with people about they don't feel it right now, the impact of some of these things I'm talking about. And I'm like, well, you know, when the gas prices go up to $6 in DC and I'm sitting here still on $2.50, I guess I could say that it's not affecting me right here, but it is. Because anytime any part of our economy has issues like that, it's like a domino effect and it starts spreading around. So if one place is out of something and they have to get a bunch of stuff to, you know, put to that area, then some other place is not getting it because all of these things were meant to go somewhere. Supply and demand is already broken down. I've been looking at the stores. I know everybody doesn't notice the same things, but I do. I notice when they reduce the amounts of aisles. I notice when they shorten the aisle's height. I notice when they arrange the groceries in a certain way. And the reason I notice that is because I worked in the grocery business for quite some time. And there's a whole psychological warfare going on that you don't know about, from sales and impulse buying and you know, where you place colors, lights, and sounds to make people buy things. And they're using the same psychological tricks in reverse to make you feel like there's still abundant choice. Meanwhile, the shelves are shrinking and you're getting less choices. But I think that's going to start impacting people in a more way. And by the time it does, you know, it's too late to tell them I told you so, and they won't care anyway. But, you know, I did mention it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, Bear Independent, I don't know if anybody knows Bear Independent out there, but he had a live broadcast tonight, and I jumped on there for a minute, and we started talking about purchasing grain. Like in the beginning, when, you know, Bear and myself had an interview probably like 2.5, it's going maybe 3 years, and I was like, you know, buy more grain, because he was doing the wholesale thing to try to get food preps up and thing. I was like, buy more grain. They were all like, yeah, you're the buy more grain guy. And it's like everything's tripled in price since you told me that, you know. It's going to be too late when it does come. Because as Lynette Zhang says, I would rather be a year too early than 1 second too late or 10 minutes too late. Because when the realization does come to people and they're like, wow, A, my money doesn't buy much food, and B, it's not getting where it needs to go, there's going to be a whole gamut of things that open up psychologically in the human mind that people weren't prepared for, because the Colonial Pipeline has gone down again, not in terms of the actual fuel capacity not being full, but the ordering system has been hacked again. So the fuel's there, but they can't determine where it needs to go or how much needs to go to individual vendors, and they lost their payment system also of, you know, which gasoline stations had ordered, received delivery, and now who owes what. So they lost that complete system. It was hijacked just yesterday. Again, another ransomware attack. But they're ceasing pumping of the pipeline. It's full, but they're not going to let any fuel get out of it this time because they don't know where it's going and who owes money and who's ordered what. So right now it's locked up again. It's full. But what's in the stations is going to begin and running low here as of tomorrow once again. And you know what I saw and heard coming back through East Tennessee? My sister told me, she's like, hey, there's lines at the stations again today. This is around maybe, I don't know, 4 p.m. or something.
Wow. I wonder.
Yeah, I know. It's just never ending. They should have never paid that money, and now everybody's after him. So each time. So what is it going to be this time? IOUs on a paper like they did in the 1600s, or how are they going to get the fuel to the place, right?
Yeah, and you know there's playing games because there's a certain amount of production that's already happened. I mean, we have stockpiles. Companies have backup stockpiles. All of these pipelines are analog if they want them to be. People are choosing to keep them computerized and globalized. It's funny how that all of these things revolve around what the global opinion is on everything that we do, from meat to grain, all of it, gasoline, all of it.
Yeah, it is a globalized thing. And you know what, I found one thing in the last gas shortage, you know, here in East Tennessee, I have a farm exemption card. So I'm a registered farm. I don't pay tax on things that are used for farm, like farm fuels, and they call it actual farm diesel. Ag diesel is the proper name for it, agricultural diesel. So I can walk into any station, and I can walk in front of all the line, even if it's a mile long, and say I have an ag exemption, please give me the diesel, and they will stop everybody else and go, this guy's got a farm. He gets first priority by the law. You guys, you're second in line. He just walked in front of you. So we went to because all the stations out in the countryside are pretty well stocked with a lot of stuff. You know, they have larger tanks than you would get in a city because they only get refilled further abreast than something that's in a city. So the carrying capacity and storage is larger in the countryside, believe it or not. So some of these gas stations built in the 1980s that still have the same tank sizes from gigantousness when there was no just-in-time delivery for fuels still exist out in your local farm areas. So if you're going to be running out of fuel, don't go for it in the town. Go out to the countryside. You're going to find it way deep out in a farming community. But here was one thing that I found. The reason I'm telling you to kind of, you know, set the stage for the story. Well, I went up to this tiny crossroad. And when I say a crossroad, I mean it's a T-junction that has 2 gas stations and a hardware store and like a little deli there. The one station across the street said, oh, we're totally out of fuel, sorry. But I know they were just saying that so they could jack the price and then say, hey, we got a fuel delivery later in the day and turn the pumps back on. I know exactly what they're doing. Because I went across the street, they're like, oh, yeah, we got plenty of fuel. All 10 pumps are running and whatnot. So the price gouging and manipulation as well playing into everything. And did I send you that? No, this is an article I was working on for a new video that in Indiana, of all places, there is a commission now calling for a national investigation into all 4 major meat packers. So what's that going to do? Well, that just gives another excuse of validity to say meat packers were gouging during the COVID. We got to investigate them. And guess what? Now they need to do something. And that's a perfect excuse why meat packers will then have another shortage. You know, because we're going to keep playing this tango. Dance with me, Ransom. Tango dance. Shortage here, excuse there. Shortage here, excuse there. You know what I mean? Oh, you stepped on my toe.
Yeah, and then they're slipping in all kinds of new taxes on everything, too. And I seen this one that you even sent me here about this global minimum corporate tax rate of 15%. Who do we pay?
I sent that. That's crazy.
Who do we pay that to? I mean, who does, where does that go if it's global? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, is it going to our treasury? No, I think not.
Well, the point was this. It starts out, the narrative is this. Companies like Apple are offshoring off the United States. And they paid zero income tax, no taxes, no corporate tax, nothing. They paid zero tax. I don't care what kind of bracket or individual or corporate, whatever you look at in Apple, zero tax. Because they offshored. Like anybody that paid $1 in tax in the U.S. paid more tax than Apple did in the year 2019. So of course the popular opinion is those bad people, they're bad actors. We got to tax them. They're trying to shirk their duties. Blah blah blah. And this is where this whole now there needs to be a corporate income tax of 15% across the planet, so no companies can come offshore from any country because immediately if they go offshore, they'll still get 15%. So there'll be no incentive to go offshore. So all the corporations should theoretically stay in their own countries because going offshore would be no benefit because they would still get taxed at 15%. Even if they stayed in their countries, it's 15%. Oh, wait, scratch the record. Biden's America is 28% now. So maybe it would even behoove countries or companies to go offshore in different countries where it was 15% because it would be about half the rate that Biden just put into place for corporations to be taxed. But anyway, that's where that whole 15% came from, is to try to prevent companies from going offshore to get zero tax. So what's the Cayman Islands going to do? Are they really going to go, okay, excellent, everybody has to pay 15%?
Well, what's so funny about that is because obviously the super billionaire companies are not going to care about 15% tax anyway. It's the smaller companies or anybody that, medium-sized companies that this will, they can't do anything offshore. They can't go anywhere. I always wondered why the U.S. could tell any business where they could operate in the first place. It's up to the consumer to decide if you want a product built somewhere else, by somebody, or here. In my opinion, I always thought if we had a true free market, it would be the customers deciding what and when and how and why they pay.
Well, I personally don't like the Department of Justice and the CFTC wandering around the planet telling everybody how they can run their cryptocurrency exchanges. Yeah, that's another whole thing. And you look back and you say, okay, I lived overseas for years and worked overseas and traveled a lot and, bouncing back and forth between the U.S. and, different companies and different contracts and things. Awesome. It was a great way of life, by the way, for anybody who ever chooses and you ever ask yourself, should I go work overseas or should I take that trip? Should I wait? No, because you can always work more, but you never get the time back to go travel and enjoy another experience. So anytime you have a chance to have another experience, whether it be close to you, and Ransom, as your example, going up to find another set of canyon petroglyphs where you need to hike to on Indian lands that were bequeathed to you for a special, only you can go up there because they understand how your mind works, that you believe what they had carved. Like those trips are so valuable. And for anybody out there that says, should I work, should I travel? What if I could save, I could, put off this year's holiday for 2 weeks and just pay down my mortgage or something. I'm like, oh my, did I just hear you say that? Anyway, it was fun traveling around the world. It was fun getting paid to go. But what I didn't like to see was our hands of the American government in every country I've ever visited, and people are super hostile because of that. I mean, the Department of Justice and the CFTC, that's the futures, anything that comes on with, like equities markets and futures is covered by the CFTC. So if, let's say, somewhere in Singapore was going to have an offering for a coin, the CFTC and DOJ would jump in and go, whoa. Well, American might buy in there. We have to regulate you because an American might, quote unquote, maybe buy in your market there. So we need to regulate you because Americans maybe could buy. So they're like, all right, no Americans. We don't want them. And they're like, whoa, wait a second. We still need to get our fingers in the pie there. So people are getting real hostile. If you're an American and you're listening to this broadcast, people across the planet are incredibly, they've all seen through the lies, and now they've all awoken to what has happened with central banking and how this, I should say, wedge into the society with the governments, with these institutions coming in, dictating foreign governments what they need to do for the American government. Those days are over. And the hostility towards Americans traveling right now is probably at the highest it's ever been. Because now that the American government is completely bankrupt and going more bankrupt, they're trying to grab at straws and grab at cash anywhere they can. And it's at some point, and I'm waiting for that day very soon, where governments are going to say no, step to the curb. And then I really am curious how the Department of Justice or CFTC will try to step in economically and do anything. When they could just run over to China or Russia's side and say, we'll cozy up to your currency, your central bank digital currencies, your systems of payment, and let's just step outside this whole Western homogeny here. So there's two systems developing right now, and I mean they're both equally weighted at the moment. So at some point, there's going to be a tip over where the American government is going to step on too big of a toe, and that giant economy is going to say, you know what, you're no longer welcome here. Now you're a foreign adversary. Get out. And then it's going to switch over to other payment systems and other protocols to move money. And as we see, all great empires have collapsed. It seems that ours is taken stretched a little bit longer out than most collapses of empires. Of 247 years is the average. But we've ended that. So as you've seen, the best would be England. It had its empire for such a long time, and the way it went quietly into the night, and people just said no. And that was the thing. And with everything, too. With the mask mandates, people are just saying no. So it needed to end because governments realized they couldn't keep it going because more people than not said no. And the same thing with England back in the 1900s or whatever. No, we don't want your overseership of systems of economy and government and whatever politics. So no, we're done. Bye-bye. And as soon as everybody said no, it ended. And we're right in this no phase for so many things right now, whether it be masks or whether it be the U.S. dollar, whether it be the corruption and this whole grasping at straws of 15% across the planet. You give us all your money, everybody needs to be taxed the same. Although it's a great narrative and a segue into a global tax. But I would ask you, where does the tax money go, and ransom? I don't have an answer for that question. And, where do you think the money would go? If it collected at 15%, then where's it going to go? United Nations? I have no idea.
It goes back, I'm pretty sure it goes back into the central banks. They're the, at least the visible tip of the, world governance there. So what do you think about the whole crash kind of Bitcoin? Do you think that's directly related to the government saying that they now want in? And because I was predicting they're going to start making laws that, you have to hand over your private information of your cryptocurrency so that they can audit it to make sure that you're not breaking any laws. And they're pushing this idea of all kinds of illicit activity with Bitcoin and others, trying to make it sound really sinister and, criminal. Washington is rushing to regulate crypto. And actually, I've been saying this for the last couple years, that I couldn't see that these people, the IRS, all of these people, the International Monetary Fund, not wanting to push over till they get control over the whole industry of cryptocurrency. I mean, because the whole idea of it is not to have oversight, but they all want oversight. The SEC, the IRS, the central banks, Congress, everybody wants to know what you're doing with your money.
Well, did you see in this year's tax return, there's a line on there, just a simple line. It's not any deduction. You don't have to write any numbers in. It says, have you acquired, purchased, been given, transferred anything in a digital asset this year?
Right.
Well, for me being stuck on Coinbase, which is a U.S. regulated firm, yeah, because they're going to give me a 1099 because I used Coinbase Pro and bought a few things and sold a few things.
Yeah, so they're already keeping tabs in certain ways already. They just don't know, exactly what you would do if you took the money out somewhere else and went. And that's what they're acting like, is somehow, without their regulation, you could be doing things, bad things with it.
Like what?
I don't know, buying stuff, selling stuff, having a free market. Because, that's literally what's illegal, is having a free market. It's just like speech, you could say this, you could say that, but you can't say this and you can't say that. And you can only say this here and not there. And the same with the Second Amendment. It's the same thing with that. It's regulated while they're saying it's not regulated. You can, if and but you're in the right place in the right circumstance. And all of these ideas are always contrary to the original freedom that you get from anything. So just when you start looking at banking, obviously, a few years back when Obama was in there, you remember they reduced the amount of money that the government needed to know about if you transferred it. So it was a bigger amount, and then they moved it down to like $9,000. They want to know if you did something with $9,000, which may sound like a lot to some people, but to other people, that's not that much money, and it really doesn't buy that much. So think about how much the government wants in your pocket, for one, and then how much they think they need to know about what you're buying and your buying habits, your buying patterns. And, we give all that information away with our cell phones and the regular monetary system of debit and bank cards and checking and all of that. We already do that. But crypto allows you to, cut through some of that and maybe do things on a down low. Like you notice that they don't really regulate PayPal so much. They make sure that you do little amounts, and banks are starting to do that too, where you can only transfer little amounts and you can only cash checks for a little amount of it you can use. You can't use the whole thing. So the whole trip is to control every single dollar, or make it difficult for you ever to do any kind of real business or any real production. And now that we're, all about closing down everything, and even with the mask mandates, I think that was all really just kind of a red herring. It's something to argue about the mask, because it's so silly. But they got the whole world to take part in it, argue about it. But that's not really what people are worried about, is it? Is it the little cloth on your face, or was it the next thing that they're mandating in order for you to take the cloth off?
What will be the next thing should be the greater question, because you can see the progression of things the way that it's moved. And what will be the next thing that's going to be the division point? Now, you got to consider that, governments are hanging on by a thread here to continue their empire, and it's falling apart at the seams. So distraction is the name of the game. Devaluation and hyperinflation beginnings is the name of the game. So what would be the greatest thing to divide the people? See, us coming together as either a cohesive society of you and I and everybody else, doesn't matter race, color, socioeconomic strata, religion, it doesn't matter. Us together as whatever country you're in is completely dangerous for the rulers. Or so, I'm not even going to call them rulers. A stolen election, people who pretend that they're now in charge of the government under a fictitious communist regime. Borderline, I could put so many descriptive adjectives behind that. Illegitimate would be the very kindest word that I could use. And I'm talking about the United States. But you see this in so many other places as well. You look at the puppet Trudeau up in Canada. At least French are growing a couple gonads out there that are starting to say, whoa, enough immigration. This is becoming an invasion now. And, going back in time, and you start to look, and I'll talk about history, a sliver here, but what would be the next greatest distraction? Because I am a fan of history. And anytime that the people coming together become too great of a threat for the authorities or, government, whatever it is, something always seems to come to start. And that was the reason I opened the show with that 1919 paper was, I go to estate sales and I always seek out these older manuscripts, the older things that have not been censored. I have this dictionary from 1890, and I actually found some references to Tartaria inside it with map, no less. Uncensored, like you would never find that today. It cost me $30 for a World Atlas dictionary with all these maps and stuff in it, but it was from a private estate sale. But these are things I seek out in history so I can kind of learn more about what was said and definitions of things and events at times that, have been scrubbed and, bleached for us to understand with our eyes today. That's why I'm really super into this 1919 article from the Armistice of how Italy was supposedly the victim.
No, you can't.
They got drug into this thing unbeknownst to them, and they had to choose sides, and again, we saw the same thing in World War II with Italy. But, reading about the Armistice of going, you know what, okay, Germany's got to pay reparations, but Italy got raked over the coals by this. They were in the wrong place, wrong time, and it's just such an interesting read. It doesn't matter what chapter in history it is, but just things came, I don't know, they rinse and repeat. This whole thing about crypto, too. He talked about the freedom of having a free life. Anybody out there who wants to get a leg up on this needs to watch Michael Saylor. Now, I understand Bitcoin's crashed, but you got to understand that, step back for a second with Michael Saylor here, he has been getting all the institutional investors on board as a store of wealth for their companies and being able to put that on the balance sheets to show growth in a company. So MicroStrategy, what they show, 500% growth this year because they went up on Bitcoin at 20,000 and then it rocketed to 60,000 and they were able to keep that on their balance sheet inside the company as an asset. And then suddenly their company is worth 3x, 5x more than it was, depending on, fixed assets or Bitcoin is a liquid asset or however you want to determine that. There's considered property right now. But a lot of companies are showing giant gains in stock value by holding Bitcoin, and forget the buybacks. Buybacks are one way that, the last 8 years of companies showing super giant revenue was continue to buy back their own stock a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher to show giant growth, but it's the same money recirculating. Well, this is a little bit different where, Saylor was onto it, 2 points. He understood that holding Bitcoin in a company, those companies are solid forever because they're always going to have working capital that they can borrow against, which is point 2. And I'm going to long-winded answer to your thing, Ransom, here. Never sell your Bitcoin. Never sell your Ethereum. Always borrow against it. Because the price, even though with this massive correction, and you got to be kidding me yourself. If you don't think this massive correction was coordinated by the corporations when you saw 25,000 Bitcoin going into Binance, offshore of America, offshore of Europe, 25,000 Bitcoin going in on a single transaction into Binance for a sell. That was somebody that was a private handshake outside and said, you know what, I was in the early days, I was bequeathed 10,000 Bitcoin. Another friend of mine has 10,000 Bitcoin, whatever. Okay, we'll sell for however many hundreds of millions of dollars that is, or billions. And, we sit tax-free, and you guys, your governments never touch us. Nobody ever touches us. We make the arrangements, and we'll put it on the exchanges, and all you companies get to buy all that Bitcoin. Because companies were getting priced out at 60 grand a Bitcoin. And you got to be kidding me if you think that it dropped to 30 and it's been bought so heavily it's back up to 45 again. Like somebody went in with a massive buy on the instant that thing hit the exchanges. There was a crush in the price. There was a massive buy spree. 20,000 of those 25,000 Bitcoin were bought already.
Yeah.
Now, who has the money to, buy the dip? I understand that, but that was an institutional buy of a controlled demolition of price to buy that dip. So back to Saylor again. The whole thing moving forward, the DeFi space, which is decentralized finance, which allows you to use your crypto holdings to either lend or put into the pool of lending to allow whatever protocol to lend, and then you getting some interest off of that. Ransom, 6.5% to 7% interest right now being paid in crypto, not fiat currencies. So if you think the tokens or the coins that you're going to lend into those platforms are going to increase in value, so let's talk about Algorand or Tezos or, there's others that you can jump into out there. You put them in you just say, all right, I want to lend them. I want to stake them. So think about that. I'm getting paid in Algorand, or anybody's getting paid in whatever tokens they want to stake. So it's not, you're not even being paid out in fiat. You're being paid back in the same token that you believe is going to increase in value. Because I did so many videos on the new African Growth Zone being facilitated using Circle, USD stablecoin, and Algorand as the protocol running across Central Africa and Northern Africa to be able to pay everybody who's working there, because the exchange rates right now don't work. So if they go to a fiat system in Africa, they're going to go to Circle USD and they're going to use Algorand. Now, that's already set up over there. That's where it's going to run. And that's where it is running. That's why you saw those massive jumps in algo from 30 cents to $1.70. It's being taken on in Africa. So think about that. Stake your coins and you're being paid in the same coin that you believe in. So you're not getting paid $1 for interest. You're getting paid in Algorand in interest, or the Tezos in interest, or Theta in interest, or whatever you're doing. And that allows you to live a free life. Because look, if you're staking that, you're getting 6.5% return on those coins that are going up in value themselves. I mean, everything keeps going up. It's not like you're in a dollar where it's a devalued asset. You're taking on the same token that is increasing in value as it goes up. And then the last point, I know it's a long-winded answer here, but think about this. Saylor has it. If anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, go to Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy CEO, and see how he talks about the future being built right now. The third, I'm going to call it Gen 3 of cryptocurrencies, is going to be this. Hands down, guaranteed. It's going to be proof of time, something like Solana or Chia. Okay, these are the protocols that are going to run proof of time. This is going to also give them the ability to run these lending. I'm not even going to call it staking. I'm going to call it an asset as collateral against money borrowed to purchase crypto. So it'll work something like this. These new platforms running off proof of time protocol, Chia, C-H-I-A, and then also the other one you look at is Solana, S-O-L is that. These things work on a proof of time where one thing has to happen first, and then it actuates a second thing, and then it actuates a third thing, and then it actuates. So it's not one full transaction. Things have to happen in advance before the transaction's complete. So it's a much faster way. Use the 1/100th the electricity of Bitcoin. And see, this is why Musk was all into this whole thing about, hey, too much electricity, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, he understood that the whole protocol needs to switch over because Musk is in on it too. So the whole thing moving forward with this, you're going to lend or you're going to borrow against your Bitcoin, or you're going to borrow against your Ethereum as an asset lent onto a platform or given to a platform as a collateral base. You then get money off of that. That money you can do with whatever you want, because you're going to be paying about 5% interest to borrow that money. And this is going to come into more institutional level stuff as well. You got Bitcoin, you got Ethereum, you'll be able to borrow against it at 5% interest rate. But the gains on it currently, even with this pullback and everything, we're still looking at 20% per year increases. So by sitting there for free with your money, even if you never pay back the 5%, it never matters. It could continue in perpetuity to gain 5%, 5%, 5%. Because your Bitcoin's scalding hot at 20, 100%, 150%, 200% per year, but you're only paying 5% to borrow that money. And see, it's a non-taxable event as well. So as the corporations understand this on their asset books, if you're able to use something that's only going to cost you 5% to borrow against, and you're able to continue to buy it and accrue, let's say at the base minimum conservative, 20% off your asset, you're looking at a whole new for free. And you understand why the governments around the world don't want you to get onto this, understand it, and they're going to regulate it because they're going to want your gains taxed. And somehow they're going to put their fingers in the middle of a non-taxable event, and they're going to change the tax code laws to include this new cycle of proof of time into lending off the asset at a 5% interest rate to accrue more. You're borrowing, so there's never a tax event. This is the whole way you need to think. You want to live you want to live free. You need to lend it and borrow against it and buy something else that'll accrue. So my last point. So sailors or anybody who understands this protocol now, you got one Bitcoin. Okay. It was worth $60,000. You can borrow against it at 5%, and the amount of money that you want to take off of that, they're only going to give you probably, right now it's around 25% valuation because they know it could drop in price. Some people are talking 50, but we already saw it drop from 60 to 30,000, so they're probably going to keep that 25% ratio. So think about that. You could have borrowed $15,000 for 5% forever. And what would you do with that 15K? You might be able to buy more crypto on this dip, and then that would rise in price. And what do? Then you can borrow against that other crypto into something else. And if you find places and ways that you can take this out from the system that it's in now into a usable system without being in, let's say, the EU or the United States, then you could live free for the rest of your life. And this is what governments and companies are onto. And I'll stop there because I could go for hours on this. The most fascinating thing for me is how to live for free forever and never have another taxable event in your entire life.
I'm on that train. That sounds good. That sounds bad though. If you're a government person. Because what are they going to do? They don't produce anything. You know, a lot of that, I'm not going to lie, a lot of what you said was Japanese to me, but I do understand when I'm looking at the graph that, you know, it starts way down here, it goes way up here, it dips a little bit. Everybody freaks out and acts like it's a super big crash. It goes skyrocketing again. Watch, I'll put it back on the graph here. Or is that the wrong one? Anyway. No, here it is. I lost it. Anyway, they showed the graph of how it was going up. And these are little dips compared to the overall growth of it. It's kind of like the article was using climate science to determine the loss. You know, the overall loss of people. Because everything I'm looking at is talking about how, you know, it's such a thing. And remember last week I was telling you how almost all of the articles last week was telling you how to get out of your cryptocurrency. It's dangerous. You're going to lose everything. And then we get a little dip and then they're all acting like, look, we're right. So there's a concerted effort against the whole concept of having, you know, freedom to buy things, sell things, and move things without government interference or taxation. And taxation is theft, in my opinion, but that's another topic. But speaking of Japanese, could you explain this article? I mean, it kind of explains itself, and I kind of wanted to get into this because the whole thing that I was telling you, the bait and switch about the mask, and then what's really, we both know what it was this whole time, and we see it in New York and with businesses, with airlines, with everybody trying to switch over to this new system, which I'm going to say it's really like a double fake, you know, switch and bait, where first it's about the mask, then it's about the shot. But what it's really about is having an identity for every single soul on the planet. And while they're doing that, they might as well, you know, go ahead and get their product in your arm. And it's turning real culty about, you know, this group or that group. And that's why so many people are mad about the mask mandates changing by the CDC, is because now they can't tell people apart anymore. They can't judge you by your political beliefs based on if you got a mask or not on. That's why some of them are choosing to still wear their masks outside. But explain this, because, you know, the Japanese are kind of really religious when it comes to blood and blood types. They have a whole system of dating. They even are really fond of the idea of DNA matching. And, you know, the whole thing about personalities with different blood types. So the Japanese are real curiously fascinated with blood, what's in it, what kind of blood, and how it represents your life. So it's odd to me, or it's not odd, rather. It actually, you know, kind of goes to that. But is there a scientific reason that they're saying they don't want people's blood that have been injected with what we were previously talking about just now?
Yeah, but forget what we were talking about right now. Let's just go back and let's say 1990s or even 2000s or 2010, 20 or 19, whatever. If you look at literature from the last 50 years, one of the scariest things that people do in an ER situation is give people a blood transfusion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just your whatever you are, O positive, AB negative, A positive, A negative, O positive, O negative, whatever. It's that when that comes into the person, they take on the personality traits of the person that donated it from them. They actually see people's change their physiology, change their bodies, change the behavior just when they're pumping the blood in. This is a well-known thing that not a lot of doctors like to talk about. You won't read about it in a lot of medical literature unless you go into the very specific keyword terms of, the change in blood transfusion, operating room procedures, something like this. So you have to deep dive into it, because that's a living organism being put back into you, but that living organism was attuned to somebody else. But now it's suddenly pushed into you. So you got to think about, 1/8 of something, anything in nature, anything you drink or eat. If I pump 1/8 of something new into your hamburger, it's going to taste different. If I pump 1/8 new water in from a different source into your bottle, 1/8 of that, if I change it, I don't care what I change it from, you're going to have a taste change. But it's the same thing. These are electric frequency molecules and blood molecules rolling through. Can you imagine the iron state of that changing and then interacting with something? Imagine if you're a very spiritual person, you got a blood transfusion from a devil worshiper. Right. This is the kind of things they talk about in some of their reports here. And then they don't want anybody, and this is another taboo and no-no I didn't know about this in medical science until very recently. Anybody who ever had a transplant, it is an absolute taboo for you to contact the family of the person who donated to you. And the same way with the blood transfusions. Because when you go back and contact the family, you've taken on the trait of that person that died from their family, or the person who donated that blood. You become very symbiotic with them, or almost the same. So organ transplants, how many millions of stories have you heard where, they got the heart and then suddenly they like to go country line dancing or something?
Yeah. They like muscle.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's the same way with the blood transfusions. Now, the reason I say that is the Japanese are super onto it. They understood the chemical balance is something small. But they got the electromagnetic frequency change that occurs when you put a new electron-bound iron state object into a new you, and how it would affect you. Sperm's one thing. Inside, if you're going to get pregnant and have a family, that's why they try to DNA, because the sperm is very same as the blood. So when you're talking about living organisms going into another individual to create life or give life or continue life, doesn't matter what it is. They're all holding RNA, DNA inside that, and frequency. And that's the whole thing I'm really starting to understand about all of these things happening now. It's not about the physical substance. It's about the physical substance changing everything else inside that affects the frequency range. And, if you can go to the frequency, that's where the outcome is. And this whole thing right now is a frequency change. And it freaks me out, the frequency change thing that's happening. Once I got my head wrapped around the whole, it's about changing the frequency of the receiver unit of the human. That is the terrifying thing. Not only is it a frequency receiver change, but it's also a broadcast change. So when you see people freaking out around others who have gotten this thing that will change their frequency, they're broadcasting out too. Their antenna has changed totally to something incredibly different. And you're talking that blood transfusion thing, and you got the vax, you got the jab, and you're going to give your blood to somebody else. Okay, let's say that you and we've never had, and millions of other people decided not to get it. But then when they get into an auto accident or a farm accident or some kind of shooting or whatever it happens, and they need blood. Once they get that blood from somebody who has had the jab, they're totally inoculated as well, because that all is going to go into them. It only takes a few drops of somebody who's been inoculated, apparently, to pass that on and start the replication process inside another human. It might take longer. Might not take 3 to 6 months. It might take 2 years, but the same end result happens. At least that's the gist I got out of the article, and knowing what I know about blood transfusions and the freakiness of this frequency change inside the human. I'm seeing it firsthand. That's the reason I'm talking about it is I'm seeing it happen firsthand. To people I know that have had that. They're changing their frequency in front of me, and I see it. And because I know it's a frequency change, I see what's happening. And it's a little bit like irksome to watch it happen in slow motion.
Yeah. And speaking of frequency change, I wanted to go through a little idea with you here in the next 10 minutes here, or 5 minutes, however long it takes here. But exactly about frequency change, and exactly about how it's not really sci-fi that this can happen. And I'm going to go through a couple of articles. So first we'll start out here with this blood transfusion thing, what we're talking about, and the essence of someone else. Now, this is really weird because I couldn't find a new article. I mean, the older article, but this one is dated 2016, and it says artificial blood, the Japanese solution for transfusions. The weird thing is I knew about this in the 1980s, that they already had this. So it's weird that they're saying they just came up with it. And then, you know, lower in that article, it talks about the law back in the 1980s that you couldn't give blood to other people that they made in Japan. But let's go a step further on this frequency thing. A lot of people are talking about, you know, I don't know how true it is or whatever it is, because, you know, I've never had a vaccine of any kind in my life. But a lot of people are saying they're having magnetic, right, experiences with the arm or the site of the supposed injection there. We'll say that. And I was thinking about this article that I'd seen before, and it was weird because someone else brought it up in a new thing. I sent you a copy of it, and I can't find it here all of a sudden. So I'll just copy the link I sent you. But it's about a magnetic protein that they made. So it's like liquid metal. So even though I'm not saying that that's what's in these or that's what people are tripping on, I want you to see the article here, if I can find it real quick. It's about a magnetic nanoparticle, and this is what's weird. Is this what usually gets me in trouble? But this is an old article, so I don't see how it can get me in trouble. But it talks about straight up mind control. So it's a genetically modified protein that's magnetic. I'm gonna copy the link and put it here so we can look at it. That can enter into an individual cell and make a magnetic field or stop or start a current in said cell, effectively letting them control behavior straight up. Now, remember, this is another 2016 article right here, and the title of it is Genetically Engineered Magneto Protein Remotely Controls Brain and Behavior. And people always think that I'm crazy when I tell them about the different technologies that are out, old, and actually pretty common in the tech world, that can easily change your mood, make you think things, make you hear voices. All of that is real things. So this whole article goes into how they can control animal behaviors using genetic engineering to create magnetized proteins that activate specific groups of nerve cells from a distance. And then you get into all these other things. As you know right now, there's a big deal going on about our government worried about our soldiers being attacked by microwave and other things. Now, you put all these things together, creating different magnetic fields, interfering in those fields with different kinds of non-ionizing radiation that can indeed maybe not, directly hurt your DNA, but it can do things like make you feel sick, make you have to go to the bathroom, keep you nervous, make you feel agitated, etc., etc., etc. These are known things. It's not a conspiracy theory. But now you add in these other technologies, and like I said, I'm not saying that's what these people are talking about when they're saying that they have a magnetic experience with their new medications. However, think about if that technology was used with the other technology they're pushing on people to get a passport. You could effectively modify the behavior of billions of people on the planet Earth. Billions with a B. And then you remember we were talking a long time ago about how many people do you need to think about the same thing to create something in this reality. I don't know. It gets pretty spooky when you start thinking about all that stuff together.
Yeah, the original research that you're talking about stemmed from, I read an article about that. It stemmed from somebody understanding a type of wasp that would inject an insect with a stinging protein that would anesthetize and turn the insect into a zombie, where that insect would then follow the wasp into the nest. And that was where the original research came from.
Yes.
And I thought, that is incredible that nature is being mimicked again to be put over as a net on top of human behavior. Because how many times have we seen this? When nature is being mimicked in so many ways, and how many inventions are from nature? I mean, Velcro would be a great example from certain types of plants that would grab onto you, etc. But that's the very base, like the easiest minimal example. But when we start stepping up, almost every single medicine is synthesized from a natural element, protein, plant somewhere. And then, the effects of, carpenter ants and all the way up to stinging wasp that can anesthetize. And it's such an interesting factoid, that one part that brought you to that article there. The original research began from a wasp that could hypnotize an insect to walk into its nest to be ingested. Weird factoid, but I thought I'd throw it out there.
I'm really glad you did, because it's like you read my mind. That's kind of where I was going, not with the wasps, but my next point, I know we don't have enough time, but when we get back, let's talk about the correlation of the never-aging ants and today's society. And this is something exactly what you're saying. It's something that you could make a technology out of that comes out of nature, where parasites make certain ants live an extremely long time. And then when we get back, we could talk about the devastating effects on their entire society from this parasite that makes a certain class of ants almost live forever, in comparison to the other's lifespan. So that would be interesting. Yeah. What do you think about
and you
that?
have to wonder, okay, in today's age and society, we have social media, we have images, there's instant news, but you have to wonder how many of these people that look super ancient right now have been around much longer than we think they have. Because if you're talking about the chrome, and that's just what the modern representation is for the elixir of life by, terrorizing another being to, extract something from it that generates life, that fight or flight response, and then putting it into somebody else so they can live longer. Starts with an A, ends with chrome.
Yeah.
You got to think about the very modern era and all the myths and legends of things that have lived in Methuselah in the Bible, for example, 1,000-year-old. But that was apparently a very youngest change of the magnetic field. If you want to bring some magnetic field science into it, we're at the very lowest lifespan of anything that's lived in the last 2 million years. Routinely, things would live to 10,000 years prior. Let's say the last million years, magnetic field strength was very different going back 10 million years, or even up to the million years, and then 500,000 when the Anunnaki started. They lived at, 10,000 years old, 100,000 years old, some of the king records there.
Yeah.
So you got to think about, okay, magnetic field resonance or some kind of change, because, some of these other planetary bodies in our solar systems that are not ours, but other star systems, the magnetics are quite different up there. So perhaps something could live 100,000 years. And interact with a set of magnetic frequency or magnetic resonance from a sun onto a planet where things could only live 100 years, 200 years. But then there are probably ways that things could extend the lifetime. We'll get back to that right after we come back on this break here. Ransom Godwin, 420 TV, Freedom is Phil, 1776. Broadcasting live tonight. If you want to check out the images going along with the conversation, that's on YouTube. And as well, David Dubine right here in the Ice Age Conversations. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Take a break. Pump it up.
All right. So we'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Just enough time for everybody to spark it up, refresh your high, and become part of the conversation in the chat room. You guys are the best chat ever. You guys talk about some trippy stuff in there. Oops, that's the wrong one. Let me see. Where am I at? Here I am. There I am. I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere. I'm here and there and everywhere. And, you know, I'm going to start some live streams from outside because I got some construction going on and my garden is just booming. The goal this year is to make a paradise in the ghetto, basically. Just a paradise, a little paradise in the desert, an oasis that's just growing food everywhere, and I'm well on my way. It's starting to look good. I just put up the skeleton of a fence today. We're going to fix that in. It'll be awesome. And then a porch, and then a roof, and then more gardening, and more farming. But anyway, I'll be back in just a second. And while I'm gone, watch the praying mantis stare at you. Look at those kitties. No, look, I got somebody to go rile them up. It's about feeding time. So all the little beasts are about to get excited and munch down some needed protein. By the way, if anybody needs a cat, I got 4 kitties that need a home, a permanent home, somebody that will take care of them forever. Oh no, give them some wet food. They're like, what? What's that? We got some dinner? Look at all those little sniffers. Look at those sniffers. That mantis were the size of a chicken, we'd be lunch. Hey, I meant wet food. But whatever. Let them have some hard food. Their little teeth can just now handle it. As little kids, my bro and I found a mantis and we were looking closely at it. I touched it and it split its bro's eye. Fun times. Oh, wow. It messed up somebody's eyeball? Wow, man. Yeah, Alcatraz. There's my son and his boots. The little beasts. They've taken over the entire bathroom in there. And what's funny is, like, he's getting mad because I make him clean it every day because those cats, they tear it up in there. Oh shit, the show's back on.
Please remember, this is listener-supported venue here. So if you like this type of conversation, you value free speech like we both do, because we've had our problems on social media being banned, censored, things, posts, videos, thoughts removed off the corporate-controlled airwaves. Please consider a donation right here at Revolution Radio, Studio A and B, freedomslips.com, right at the top there, nav bar. You can find a way to donate, whether it's PayPal, direct check, whether you're buying the merch, or any other ways that you might deem necessary to keep information flowing. And as I've said so many times, every single program, literally since I began here on Revolution Radio, thank you for having me and allowing me the chance to speak every week here with Ransom and others as well. This will be one of the last bastions of free speech on the net as things start to go down. So communication channels, as they start to be clipped off, Revolution Radio will be one of the last ones up. So consider also a last communication point for yourselves. And if you think that's a value, also continue to support the channel here and the station. Keep it online. There's a lot of running costs. You know, there are producers here, as well as the streaming costs and everything that's associated with the online presence. So, you know, we're in a world where things cost money these days, even if it's digital. So keep that in mind. Thanks for your time and donation on this. So, Ransom, as you were saying before we got off, what happens to a colony of ants where certain ants can live to an enormous amount of lifespan, far beyond? You know, if we went into a human realm of this, Methuselah, for, you know, somebody who would live 1,000 years, comparatively to when we live for an average of 100. How would that change society if there was a class of people who all lived to 1,000 years and the rest of us would die at 100? What would that class of people do? They'd have 900 more years of knowledge, understanding of the human. But what if you had something like an AI that could live into infinitum? You know, a lot of different levels on this. But you were talking about the ants before we went to break.
Yeah.
So that was my AR that fell over there. Hold on, I got to pick that up.
I'm listening. No, I'm just joking. Actually, this is cool.
No, it was unloaded. No, there's no loaded. It's got 5.56 rounds in there with hollow point because we got this bear in the back. So every time we're going out to look at the beehives, we got 5 hives back there. We got this bear running. Well, there's actually 2 bears that are running up and down the valley, and a lot of neighbors are getting a bunch of stuff, you know, trash knocked over every night. Hives, they're raided by these bears. So I go out and check my hives every day, at least 2 times. Got 5 live hives. Got 5 hives out. And I always carry an arrow with me with 5.56 rounds hollow point because, you know, Tennessee, you're still allowed to do that. I can carry what I want out here. So I was out earlier today, or actually this evening at sunset, checking everything out, and 300 blackout here. I had it just sitting right over there on one of the curtain edges because I keep the mags in a different place, and it was unloaded, and I was going to put it back in the safe tonight. And as we were talking, I was just leaving it there for the radio program. But that was the sound in the background.
All right.
Maybe a little too much personal information, but I do it this year, and I don't know why. But I want to have something where if a 500-pound animal comes running at me in the forest angry, that I have a chance to, defend my field property against it and myself. Right. And I'll say, thanks, Ransom, stop.
No, absolutely. Me or the saber tooth. That's an easy decision, you know. Actually, this is off on a side tangent here, but you remember that movie, I think it was called The Day After Tomorrow, where the wolves just went nuts and started acting like dire wolves because they knew that there was a superstorm. That kind of sounded like that. The bears are getting hungry. I wonder why. No. So let's get to the ants here, and I think you'll find this really align with human civilization, in my opinion, and I'll tell you like my trip on it. So basically, this is a weird set of ants that lives in Germany, and it gets infested with a certain kind of little parasite. Now, the parasite, oddly and weirdly, and they say they don't understand the chemical reason or genetic reason that this happens, but anyway, these ants almost live forever, compared to the other ants. And it starts out with just a couple of them, and they tend to just hang out, and they no longer work. And they don't get abused by the worker ants or nothing. They actually go out of their way to take care of them, and it's a kind of younger ant. So let's call the immortal ants kind of like the millennials in a way, in one way, and then in another way they're also the elite. So these ants, they just stop working and they just don't do much of nothing. And there's only a little bit of them at first, but then their numbers start to grow as the parasite spreads through the colony. And these ants, who normally take care of eggs and normally take care of their queen and feed all of their drones, they spend more and more time taking care of these immortal ants. So these immortal ants, the parasite makes them live a really long time, so that the best odds on the ant being eaten by a bird or whatever, and it's one of the young ones, so it's a different color than most of the ants. So the idea, I guess, is that the parasite makes it live forever in exchange for being eaten in the end. But in reality, what happens is most of the parasitic ants just hang out in the colony and they start growing in numbers. And the colony has to take care of these non-working, privileged ants, basically. And these ants will complain, and they get more and more time, and they get more and more time from the colony until the colony collapses, because there's more parasitic ants eating than there are workers working and providing food and farming and doing all these other things. So there's many correlations with this colony of ants and real people. Not only do these ants act like elite in the way that they live far longer than the rest of the ants, even sometimes longer than the queen, that also has a genetic trick. So you could say she's also an elite. But these other elites will get to the point where they suck so much substance out of their civilization that it'll collapse. And also, think about if these were people. It's kind of like millennials. They're mad about the colony taking over the next colony, or they're mad about them colonizing the hill in the first place. So they quit working and they just kind of hang out there, and then society has to take care of them and the damage that they're causing more and more as more and more of them kind of multiply. And it kind of correlates the parasite kind of with the elite world government, but also with communism and how government eats out the substance of its citizen. And for me, this is a perfect example of that. I don't know, what are your thoughts on it? But also, there's the trippy thing about the chemicals making long-lasting life, which if ants have a version of that, of course, there's probably an elixir of life for humans.
Which has been found out centuries, if not millennia, prior to today. And who would be using that? The same rulers and families, the same countries, the same hierarchies. Seems to be disguised in central banking with the names that are unknown now with the Bank for International Settlements. It's always the same players at the top. And the elite at the top, if they're immortal or live for 1,000 years and they have the elixir, they would have figured out the way for somebody at 7-Eleven or somebody doing whatever task, raising cattle, growing food, delivering the food, polishing their silver collection, whatever, to keep it going in perpetuity. Because the way we are now in this interglacial, it seems as it's been like that for the last 10,000 years. And you know that one movie that I saw prior, 10,000 years BC.
Yeah.
Everybody was living like in a Stone Age state, but when they got to the pyramids, they had maps, they had mathematics, they had the world plotted. So something was going on far beyond, and I really believe that's a good recollection into. There are some on the planet who live incredibly long. Now, I would imagine that they would live underground, because what we're about to experience in the next 3 years here, with the earth cracks and all these fissures and all these disruptions in supply chains beginning, July and August are when you're looking for here, by the way, will be the first validation of such a thing. But remember, the bridge cracks over the Mississippi River would be another thing. There's a kind of events that we're looking at here. And maybe the colonial pipeline going down wasn't really, it was more of a psychological test, knowing that there will be earth cracks and the pipelines will rupture anyway, and there'll be fissures and they'll have to close down the pipelines. So maybe this was kind of gauging how fast. It's a good test. But think about if you live for if you were living underground, you could live for tens of thousands, plural, of years. And what if you needed this above surface creatures to supply you beneath surface for the things that you needed? Because the containers are long gone right now. I don't know what's happening with all the containers. There's now a pallet shortage, which goes right into the container shortage. So where are all the shipping pallets going? Yeah, you could say there's a lumber shortage and it's expensive, but just because it's expensive doesn't mean you can't manufacture it. It's that there's just literally not enough shipping pallets have all disappeared. Like, where do they go at a certain time in the last few weeks that every shipping pallet that's being used across the world just disappeared? Okay, that's a weird one. But if you know that the next cycle of calamity is coming where you need to get all the resources off the top of the planet that you cultivated, it's like, a hurricane's coming in. And you live in Florida, and you have a certain amount of time to harvest the oranges. Or if it's, that the massive storm front's coming in, and you have a certain amount of time to harvest all the crops out of the field before they're flattened by sideline winds. You're going to work into overdrive and just put the night lights on and run your tractor at night with the lights. It seems like that is happening right now. And if you were in a beneath planet species in an underground world, that you've cultivated everything on top of the world, or maybe you're not. Maybe I'm too far-fetched. Maybe it's just the elite that have their underground bases. But whatever's being up now is being scraped and scarfed off the top of the planet and put underground for something that's happening right now. It's the same way. Storm clouds are on the horizon. I don't care if you're a fruit farmer in Florida or if you're a sideline wind person in Oklahoma. When that storm's coming, you need to get the crops out of the field right now. And that is exactly what's happening in our society. But take it that step further. Who's living for those thousands of years? See, those are the questions that are not asked. Never will be, except by you and I and a few others. This concept of money is a bizarre one, too.
Yeah. I always wonder that because it seems like all of the plans, plots, and different things that I've ever read about with the elites or secret societies, all of them are just so long to take place, and they're all based on incrementalism, so that the human being with what appears to be a limited lifespan doesn't notice the changes generationally enough to ever fight back. And just when I was thinking about that, I just realized there's another ant species also that lives in the southwest of New Mexico. I don't know the name of it. It's like an imposter ant, and what it does is it sneaks into a colony and then just replaces the children with their eggs, and they put off a pheromone so all the other ants think that they're part of the colony, and then they just slowly outpopulate them until they disappear. This is all in nature, and I'm not even correlating that to human behavior, but the other one I was. And you're right about these things. I mean, when you really stop to think about how big our universe is, and I'm not trying to get woo-woo on you, but how big our universe is, you know that things have been happening for a really long time. Now, I'm showing everybody an article about astronomers discovering what they think is the oldest star, or one of the oldest stars in the known universe. And if you remember, a couple years ago, they came out with saying that they found a star that was older than the Big Bang. Now, when you think about these things, you can think about it all kinds of different ways. But the fact is for, probably billions and billions or infinite amount of time, things have already been happening. So to sit there and, naively think that there aren't other intelligences, not only in the universe, but maybe right here on our planet, that may or may not live quite a bit longer or have been around a lot longer than we have in our naive thinking of, what time is. And if you can take anything from history, you know that they change it and they replace it. I mean, even our dating system starts at a really, really old. And of course, there'd be powers that are old.
Well, let me step off a cliff here and say 21 to 23 million years for humans to be on this planet. I know it sounds a little more outrageous than you might think, but it would explain the out-of-time artifacts that we keep being fed. Hammers in 4 million-year-old coal layers, the ebb and flow of energies, and this galactic current sheet that blasted out a wave that'll be here in 2023 that's traversing the speed of light, turning off stars as it goes along through its current field. That'll be interesting when it arrives here. But just to do the math on something you mentioned there. So pretty much agreed science or agreed whatever timelines say that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. So how old do you think the established agreed dates at the Big Bang, which I don't agree with myself, but the spurring of the third dimension in what we know as third dimensionality, hard substance stuff from a different dimensional realm came into existence and filled that space, literally, like 12 billion years, something like that, give or take. So that means that something else out there has, what, an 8 billion year head start on us? And we think that somehow we're the smartest game in town, or we're the only game in town. Like, life doesn't not exist. The base default is life everywhere. The base default is something exists everywhere. Thermophiles, I don't care if it's the coldest, the hottest, the most acidic, the most saline, whatever it might be. There's life everywhere and any niche ever. And as soon as that life disappears, and their niche instantly refills its spot. Caustic acid, so they always talk, well, nothing could exist in the vacuum of space. We just haven't been far enough out to see other things that are already up there existing in the vacuum of space. You know, the original thing was, there's nothing at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. It's too deep. The pressures are too high. It's too cold. It's too much pressure. There'll never be anything there. And then would they find like thriving forests of beings down there and entities, things? I like to call them entities and beings because they are just like us. You know, they're thinking, they're alive. They're replicating. They're another being as well. They're another entity on our planet. So for the baseline and the base construct of everything to be life itself, and to have something else that's 8 billion years ahead of us, it might be a sliver technologically more advanced than us. I don't know. I'm going out on a limb saying that.
Right. I think so too, and I mean, just from my little bit of research looking into esoteric stuff, it's quite obvious to me that for quite a long time, people have known a lot of secrets that get hidden from everyone else because everyone knows knowledge is power. So to those with knowledge, they don't want to share the knowledge in the same way that, you know, some other people do, that enjoy freedom and exchange of ideas. And you know, that's really weird that you said that you were tripping on that article about 1919, and I know you've seen that picture I sent you of this old paper I found in a book called Metaphysics of Raw Foods, right? And it's an old, I'm thinking 1950, no, it's 1963 copy of a 1940s book right here. But inside of it, I found a copy of a 1920s article from I always mess up the name, the Theosophical Society. So their magazine or whatever, I guess their publish, their quarterly or whatever that they put out. In the title of it was, "Is Time a Dimension of Space?" And it goes into all kinds of really trippy occult stuff mixed with, particle physics and theories about the universe, and also a lot of Vedic philosophers in there. And I just thought it was bizarre, the whole thing. And then we're talking about how long ago have intelligences, even if they're human groups, been running society, and how much of it is planned. Now, in my opinion, I think there's a good 90% of it that's planned, because I see it, I read about it, I see the propaganda about it, and then I see it in fruition right before my eyes like I am now. So, When I read the Project for a New American Century, I just thought, wow, that's crazy. But then I saw the events of that think tank manual unfold. I saw 9/11. I saw us go up into space and repopulate space and control low Earth orbit. I saw us invade 7 countries, yada, yada, yada. So when you read into these people in their little circles and they're talking about plans that have been going for some time, it's hard for me to say, oh, well, that's just a coincidence, this is happening in the Middle East, or that they're doing that, and it's all, just a bunch of single dumb people that are in positions, and there's no grand plan at all. I see a grand plan working, and whenever they're telling me basically that I'm going to live in a world where every inch is monitored, and that I have to have a little bracelet, tattoo, or chip to move about freely on this earth, I want to know who's running that system, because it's obviously not a human system. No human needs to know the whereabouts of all humans on the planet, and no human could even do anything with that much data. So, in my opinion, there has to be artificial intelligence or a superior intelligence that has an artificial intelligence, or a merger of the two.
Well, that would be going up to, cattle management and harvesting dates and choice of different harvest species or subspecies inside that set. So whether it be, I don't know, feeder cattle or Angus or whatever, you get different subspecies of, milk cow, whatever, dairy cows. So if you start to look at that, if you're going to tag all the animals, the only reason you're tagging them is for harvest. And see, I want to take it a step further is, what's the harvest about? Is it energy harvest, emotional harvest, thought harvest, physical blood harvest, or meat harvest? Because there are many ways to do that.
Yeah.
And you got to think those 5 subcategories. If something's tracking us at that level and wants to categorize every single human in the energy resonance field that they're outputting, and that would also dovetail right into emotional resonance field output. I mean, if you're, like resonating hate every day, or you're resonating love and thankfulness and gratefulness every day, those are so separated by like a chasm, like a Grand Canyon of difference. So how many ways and means can you categorize a human in terms of, are you overweight? Are you fit? Are you organic? Do you grow your food? Are you a fast food? Do you eat factory foods, kind of thing? How many ways can you dissect it down? And once you do get that, category, that's a lot of data to input on each individual. But then you start to think about all the phones listening to us, all the devices listening to. They know your purchases because of the credit cards or the debit cards, or cash is a dwindling thing. A lot of people don't use cash any longer. There's a good database on people living in the West, maybe not so much deep in Myanmar and Saigon State, further north up toward the Himalayan basin, something a little bit difficult to get data out of. But what is the whole categorization of everybody about? That should be the question that should be deeply asked. Okay, we're going into this. I personally don't really want to deal with it. That's why I'm sitting out on a farm in East Tennessee, hell, on a side of a mountain near a national forest. Because if you say, well, you're not going to be able to travel around freely, I've relegated myself to just chilling out on several hundred acres for the rest of my life and not having to really leave, because I've had such an abundant life, and it comes down to it to just protect people and bring people out here and create a community on hundreds of acres in East Tennessee where we don't have to worry about all this. We can defend it. We can fend for ourselves. We can produce our own medicines, foods, alcohols, and everything else in between. And if somebody needs to go to town to barter or get something different, that's fine, because there's tons of barterable material, things that are created, foods, medicines, alcohols, whatever. But what's categorizing us? I've accepted that I might need to stay out in a countryside location for the rest of my life. That's fine. I'm willing to do that and provide a safe haven for others who want to escape and get out to the same. Because I think that's this reset, that ebb and flow that's happened many times in our human civilization it's come to this pinch point, because you already see in medicine, just boil it down into medicine. People are getting the vax, people are not. they're creating their own independent medical system right now where things are diverging onto a Y in the road anyway. You're going to go left or you're going to go right. And I don't mean that politically. I mean, you're going to shoot to the west or you're going to go to the east, okay? You're going to come to this road and you're going to choose east or west. Well, the same thing in these lifestyle choices moving down. With it or without it, and the new medical system evolving too, it's going to be new economic system of the people who chose to go one direction. You either get the jab and you go down the same system of tracking, and that's fine. Or you're going to come down to people like, I don't want that. I want to be a free-thinking human that's not interfered with in my resonance field by some frequency or something in my body. Cool. But that's also going to be an entirely different economic system based on barter, trade, and equal value, and also meshing over into the old system of crypto, or I should say gold, silver, crypto, and maybe some fiat in the beginning. But that's going to split again. And it's going to come out to places like myself here where we're super far away from any frequency towers and stuff, and I want to stay out here. And others are going to want to travel and go back to concerts and stuff, and that's cool. You can go off there. But different lifestyle choices for different people. You know, I may say this now and regret it in 10 years and be like, you know, it's a bad choice to get out on a farm and have bees and have my orchards and trying to get the chickens up and having a fishing pond and stuff and live near the Amish and stuff. Maybe that's a bad choice. I don't know. But I'm relegating myself to right now that's cool for me to have this choice where I don't need to get on the system again as much as I can stay out of it.
Yeah.
But how many times have we played this dance through history? What's categorizing us? What's tracking us to put us as a food source? And when I say food, don't think food as you eat at a dinner. There's so many levels of frequency, vibration, and dimensionality inside the human as well. So to just touch on it and be like it's a food source, they're going to eat you like a lizard reptilian, that's so naive thinking. The levels of the human receptivity or the broadcast off the human is like infinite. So what's going to try to tap into each of those levels and use that? Is it a saleable product to a different star dimension or a different galaxy that this AI is in tune with? But again, like what's that AI going to gain by, you know, harvesting something from a human that could be sold in a different galaxy? Like what's the AI going to get? Are there like different AIs computing with each other that they get something from a different galactic realm that it can't get here in our Milky Way galaxy that it needs to trade with, like Andromeda or something? But it needs to harvest something from the human to get something from Andromeda Galaxy for the AI to continue, and I don't know, it gets kind of complex for a little while there.
It sounds like the perfect way to, tap information from the universe, though, if you could set up an AI everywhere. And what else would they be wanting? Like you were saying, all these different things about farming. It has to be information. Otherwise, why would they want to, like you said, categorize everyone and every action that they're doing? And the only thing I can figure out is that they actually feed off of whatever energy we produce. Maybe not, literally eating it, but it's producing some kind of energy that they want to control. Otherwise, we wouldn't get all of these weird programming things on Hollywood. We wouldn't get, these massive fear campaigns to make you afraid of this or that. And I don't believe they would be trying to manipulate your personality and your behavior if there was not some kind of output that, to put a better lack of the word monetize, how about digitize? Because it seems like that's what's happening. Like you said, it's an energy thing, definitely. And every time you go back to that, it just makes me think, not to ad nauseum say the same thing, but all of these technologies that are out right now are about and related to changing your frequency and your energy output. I mean, all of them, including that magnetic stuff. If you use that on a human, those proteins to invade brain cells in us, and maybe if you had a billion, like you said, a billion of those thinking of the same thing, imagine the computational power of that kind of supercomputer. That would far outweigh anything that you could solder together with microchips and things like that. So maybe that is the commodity itself, is our computing power. And just the fact that, like you said, each human is an infinite amount of creation if we were allowed to do that and not distracted. And the game being played is an obvious game of distraction. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many nonsensical things about having to live human life. I mean, if you think about the amount of localities in the U.S. and then find out how many municipalities have dumb laws, and then the state has dumb laws, and then you got the federal level, and then you got to deal with the world level, and then all at the same time, always feeding into the system your taxes, effort, time, sweat to pay off these things like electricity, food, and other things, which makes you use up your life. So it makes me think that maybe they just want to tap into our subconscious and you know, fill our lives full of distraction and busyness while we're giving them something. And I don't think, you know, everybody always thinks that people do things for money. The elite they don't do things for money. The central banks print and create the money. They make the money because you need the money, and they know that you will toil all day to get it. And then on the other point there, with the frequency thing, think about that, is that the whole world now has been in tune for the last year. I mean, well, except for wide awake people kind of like us. And we may be wrong about a lot of things, but at least I'm not in the same frequency as the hive mind that seems to be a real thing. Not unlike those ants I brought up.
Not unlike the Star Trek episodes of the hive of the Borg, integrated with some liquid metal in their brains that was a hybrid human machine.
Crazy. But it's real. Somebody said reptilians are bloodthirsty humans in the chat there.
Well, that's okay. That's one level of it. Okay, the sustenance and the need for I think maybe it's an iron thing that they're trying to bring in. You know, it's interesting because it's metallic, but then, you know, the blood is mainly iron based, but then the lizards or whatever reptilians are feeding on the iron off of that, the sustenance of iron coming into their system. So it's really interesting that we're running back onto the same magnetism inside the human once they get that thing in them. Have you seen that? I saw this. I would have thought it was a joke at first, but I watched a video where somebody stuck a magnet to their arm right in that site that they had the injection.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, that's real interesting. But I thought it would be one or two people doing it kind of as a joke spoof thing. But after about the 15th minute of a couple hundred people doing it, I realized that's really strange and that's spooky and that's real. Because it was just a compendium. It was kind of like one of those challenge. Remember the ice bucket challenge, like pour water on your head and do something kind of crazy thing.
Yeah.
But this has become a new challenge, like, hey, get the thing and then put a magnet on your arm and see if it sticks. Challenge. Okay, cool. But watching that for 15 plus minutes of people doing that and all the freakouts and like the realizations at their minds at that moment. So one, it was really spooky for me to watch magnets stick to people's arms, but as soon as they moved it a few inches away from wherever a plunging substance went in their arm, that it didn't stick any longer. And the magnetism it just didn't work on the body. Secondly, what was most realism for me is the people's reaction to that once they realized what was in their bodies. I mean, so I kind of looked at it about 3 or 4 maybe different ways that I noticed right offhand. I'm sure a psychologist could have identified many more ways, but I saw like a solid 3, maybe 4 ways that people dealt with it. One, the first way always is the laughing, like, oh, that's so cool, huh, cool, all right. But the next one was like oh, can't believe it, what? And then the third was like you or I would be like, oh my God, I can't believe it, no, I can't do it. And they freak it out like that. And the fourth one was just like silence, where they put it on there like, didn't say anything, out of shock and awe that it was real. So what is it with, that original post there, that eating the flesh and the blood, okay, that's an iron substance.
I'm sorry. I was looking at this article I sent you again about the magnetic protein there, and it's talking about how it's an iron storing protein called ferritin.
Okay, that's on the physical level, on just iron, Fe. Great. It's in the blood. Blood's mainly comprised of iron. That's great. It's a frequency receiver. I think that's part of what the iron in the blood, or the blood or in the human is about, is to be that receptacle of frequency receiving or broadcasting, both. But think about that frequency broadcast is an energy source as well. Because I'll tell you a personal story, and it's very, it always, I can't ever unsee this or unthink it or unremember it. I went down to Cambodia in the 1990s, and the Pol Pot era had just ended. When I say just ended, I mean really just ended. Like everywhere you went, there were landmine signs up. And I was, backpacking around in Thailand, and took some time off to just, see a little bit of Southeast Asia. Laos was no better. They call it Lao. Landmines everywhere. You can't go hiking anywhere. I mean, shit, the place was just a landmine fest, and it was so terrifying to be in some areas. Like, they're like, don't even, if you're gonna pee, you got to pee on the road. Don't pee even into the bushes, because you could set off a landmine. And I'm like, whoa, maybe I'm in the wrong place, man. But down in downtown Phnom Penh, there's this place called Tol Sleg, which is the prison where they took people in to torture them. And I'm getting chills even talking about her. It was such the freaky experience. Like, within blocks of that place, you could feel the energy. And when I say that, like, it's hard to describe. Because we decided to ride bikes for a fun day.
See, I was looking that up. Did we lose you? We lost you. Hello? I think we lost transmission there. Anyway, look at these Pol Pot prisons. This is what kind of stuff he's talking about right here. Crazy. See that full screen. It went dead silence here. Let's see here. It says we're still on though. Maybe his internet went out. Or maybe mine went out. Do you guys still hear me? Am I still broadcasting? I can't tell. Am I on the line?
Yeah, Ransom, I'm back, man. I had to take a moment there.
Anyway, yeah, no, I was showing some of these Pol Pot prisons. This one full of bones right here. Another one was just creepy. So you're talking about the energy of a prison or something like that when you cut off. YOLO? YOLO.
Hard to explain it, man. You could feel it for blocks. And I understood that death feel.
Yeah, that's creepy. I kind of get those.
And being in there, you could feel that something else was inside that right now.
Yeah.
That was the harvest. I understood it. The same thing is happening again right here.
Do you think that it's something just sick and simple, or it could be something just sick and simple as much as, when we keep talking about farming, that the reaping is just straight up a blood sacrifice of these crazy people and their weird, ideas of blood and the power of blood and the power of ceremony with blood. I mean, I always thought that 9/11 was just one big blood sacrifice that the whole world had to participate in and watch and get emotional about. It was every day on television, and then they changed all the laws and made everybody scared. And it seemed like exactly like kind of what you're describing is that kind of energy to harness it. And I get the opposite sometimes when I visit these ancient sites. There's always a vibe there, and I always wanted to go to the megalithic sites to kind of compare the energies that come off of places. But what you're talking about is a really creepy energy at a place. I mean, this is a place where a lot of people went through hell on earth. And like you were talking about that chrome stuff, seems like lots of cults are reaping product.
No, I had to step back there for a second. It was such an intense experience. I can't even describe to you how that they've cleansed it a lot since.
Yeah.
So if you go there now, there have been so many monks and other Christian organizations that have come there to try to bless that place, to make that presence leave there. But when it first ended, they wouldn't even let monks in there to cleanse that energy out. And when I say that, it was a harvest. I see it again.
Yeah. And we know what they're harvesting one way. I get in a lot of arguments with this idea of mathematics, so I'm going to do a show about the population plateau, and that has nothing to do with Earth cycles, sun cycles. Well, it may have a lot to do with it. That's not what I mean. I mean, their mathematics have nothing to do with that. It's just based on age, replacing your oneself with children. We were headed towards a plateau at right about now until about 2030, which we were supposed to plateau off and start dropping in population as just as a human cycle of the way we've been reproducing and dying in this particular age. And then you add in all of these weird government plans, you add in the position we are in time as far as Earth and Sun cycles or galactic cycles, and it makes for a pretty interesting near future for us to live through.
July. It begins. If you're ready for it, the earth cracks will start in July. You've seen the bridges already go down, start to in Mississippi. So that was another thing, that how much grain traffic is taken down the Mississippi River. So when the cracks in the bridge formed across Memphis, what they did was stopped all the barge traffic. And if you hadn't seen the amount of barges stopped, it's about 1,200 grain barges were backed up both sides of the river. And that was one tiny little bridge off Memphis. Now, in the Memphis news, they made it talked about all the detours. They had to cover it a little bit. Even here in Knoxville, made the news because, hey, you're heading to Memphis. Remember, you got to go the other bridge because it's a local event. But I talked to somebody out in Colorado, and they're like, no, I'd never heard about that. What do you mean? So it's going to be a localized thing. But an entire bridge cracked in half. And these are the same things that are going to be expected for all these earth rifts and cracks and all these types of things. So, pipeline. Now, I'm going to go back to John Casey's book here, Upheaval. So as we come in and the magnetic fields change on the sun, it's going to affect our Earth's crust. But enter now July of 2021, when all the gas giants start to form their own magnetic field and their own toroid looping magnetic field. It's going to start to get more intense every day until October 2024. During this time, the top 2 miles of our crust are going to have a lot more anomalies in it. You're starting to see like huge amounts of mud volcanoes, sand volcanoes, which is an anomaly. I called that last year, and now there's more sand volcanoes going off. The main thing to look for is going to be the cracks. I encourage everybody to read John Casey's book called Upheaval. It details in incredible detail on what would be expected, but there's 5 things. The bridges are going to crack, pull apart from their banks, or actually break in the middle like this happened in Memphis. Pipelines are going to break and rupture. They'll just get pulled apart, which I think the Colonial Pipeline might have been a test to see how long it would take before fistfights started in the gas stations. Railroad tracks are going to separate, and it's so interesting now that the UK wants to have a 6-week moratorium to look at all the cracks in the tracks there. And the carriages, they're trying to blame it on the undercarriages of the trains, but they want to limit rail traffic across the UK to check out all the tracks and all these things for the next 6 weeks. Highways. So we've seen an enormous amount of highways that have had cracks and things fall off and landslides off the highways, etc. Especially in Alaska, other places in California. How many, super major highways have been closed over this last year from parts of the highway collapsing and actually falling out? And then landslides into what would be waterways or locks or transportation off of water, draining lakes and rivers. So these are the major categories that are going on. But for me, I'm also looking for other signs like mud volcanoes, sand volcanoes. And when I say that, I'm talking about a mud bubble volcano that might shoot up, a couple, 200, 300, 500 feet in the air of mud. And sand volcanoes is a rare one. They're super rare anyway, but I was saying that would be another indication. And then how many have we seen pop up over the last month, from Florida to the Yucatan Peninsula, all the way down to Southeast Asia, Africa, everywhere these mud volcanoes or sand volcanoes are starting to rift out and blow sand and water mix, sludge, mud, water, sand mixes. So with that being said, like everywhere you see across the board right now, they're talking about supply chain disruptions. Is that a cover for what's coming? Because which one's scarier for you? An economic collapse, a supply chain disruption, can't get something from this country, or everything to deliver every supply to you is going to get disrupted by nature as the top 2 miles of our Earth's crust starts to rift apart from July forward more intensely every day. So July forward, and it's most interesting that the economic forecasts also dovetail and overlay exactly with these forecasts from the the outer solar system realms. From July forward, we're going to get an enormous amount of Earth's crustal displacement, cracks, rifts, and breaks of things supply chain related. But at the same time, from JP Morgan, Bank of International Settlements, International Monetary Fund, and uber amounts of banks in Scotland, all the way down, we're all saying, hey, from July forward, we're going to have an enormous amount of economic contraction because the stimulus is not going to continue. There's going to be a huge, gigantic amount of supply chain disruptions moving forward from July. So I can't believe that the dates in July and their July and my July are all matching up for the just different random happenstance events. So CYA and get some extra storable food, water filters. There's a lot of stuff available on Amazon still, and I hate Amazon, dude. I hate Amazon. I really don't like using it, but in this time, there's no time to protest now because your protest is going to do nothing. Get what you can available right now. Get it as quickly as you can. Bite your lip and use the resources available to you because they're soon available, not going to be there.
Right.
Deal with the devil now because you're going to need the supplies later. And this is the harvest. This is the harvest of the human energy supply and the energy resonance. Whatever dark thing is upon this planet, AI is one thing. It's an entity inside our wires and cables. It's trying to take state in the 5G grid. That's fine. It's a thing.